Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
This is your time. This is your call to arms. For the Cryptid Connection is your voice. I'm your host, Jennifer.
And I'm your host, Stephen. Welcome to Cryptid Connection.
The Cryptid Connection podcast is brought to you by CryptidConnection.com, a website dedicated to you, one who has interest in all things cryptid and paranormal. CC is a place where you can enjoy a hassle-free lifestyle and community of Bigfoot pursuit. All our podcast guests are members of the website. Stop by via the internet and visit. Guarantee you will start to feel at home. CryptidConnection.com.
Are you ready? Are you ready to try? In a holy Mount Zion, you got to make your decisions, but don't wait too long.
Hey everyone, I want to invite you to keep a lookout for Monday. I'm going to release a special show. We're going to check in with some of our members who have been active over this weekend doing research out in the field. I know we're going to hear from Jeremy Gibson. We're going to hear from Ann Walls, Logan Kraft. The Millers are out. We got a few other people too, if we can get a hold of them. But anyway, it's just going to be a kind of a call, quick reach out, see how they're doing. They're going to actually be in the field, and we'll get some updates from them. Anyway, I hope everyone's having a good holiday weekend, and sit back and relax. And we've got Brandon Lowe, who has not been interviewed before. He's part of our community now, and it's really interesting to get back and listen to his encounter and then find out a little bit about who he is and what he does. Brandon is with the North American Dogman Project, and he's out of Virginia. Brandon, welcome to Cryptid Connection. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, we're doing okay. We appreciate you taking the time out to talk with us. You're a new member, and you've put some interesting posts up, and I wanted to reach out and talk to you a little bit. Let's get started with getting to know you a little bit better. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you've been involved in?
Well, I got involved in the subject back in 2012 at a close-up sighting of a Sasquatch in Mecklenburg County, Virginia. And ever since then, I've just been running around trying to find out as many clues as I can, try to figure out what was going on, mostly just to prove it to myself that I wasn't crazy. Felt kind of crazy after seeing that. Couldn't prove it to anybody, and now I'm here in Chesapeake, moved about 2 hours east of where I was, and been searching through the rivers that lead in and out of the Dismal Swamp, trying to find as much evidence as I can. And that's been about it here lately.
Okay, let me ask you. You obviously alluded to an encounter, and maybe in a few minutes we'll get into that. This sounds like this has been kind of an obsessive thing for you. You had your encounter, and nobody would believe you. I'm assuming you've got kind of the normal experience in that regard that a lot of people have. Your family won't do it. Your friends think you're nuts. Your girlfriend probably thinks you're nuts. That kind of a thing. How did you deal with that? What is it? What just drove you in deeper to go look? I mean, did it just make you fascinated, or was it a while? Like, did you have a break between the sighting before you got involved into looking into this, or was it something that was kind of immediate? How did it happen to you?
Well, right after it happened, there was about a week where I wouldn't get anywhere near the woods. I couldn't do it. If it was nighttime, I couldn't get anywhere near the woods. If I couldn't see what was around me, I didn't want to be anywhere near it. And then after that week broke, I ended up researching. I think I was around 15 when it happened. I was about to turn 16. It was right near my birthday, because it was that fall. And it was me and my buddy. We saw it, and he didn't want anything to do with anything after that involved. In fact, I think he just kind of shut it out of his mind altogether, because he never talked about it again. But me, I just couldn't stop looking for it, which ended up leading into me joining a group and going off on calls for them.
Now, when you say calls, you're talking about witnesses reporting events or seeing something, that kind of a call where you go out and you investigate it?
Yep, and go and look at the area.
How'd that work out? There's not a lot of groups that actually field live calls like that, where someone reports and then they go out and they investigate. I'm assuming these are relatively recent reports and sightings that have been in. Am I correct?
Yes, and it's very rare, because we don't, especially here in Virginia, people seem to be pretty close-lipped about stuff.
Well, what would be a typical expedition for you?
For me, usually I'm alone. I go out in the middle of the night, usually after work, spend a few hours hanging out in the woods somewhere, see what I can see. Sometimes I go out before work, look for tracks, look for odd structures, anything that seems out of place. So far, at least around here, I found very little stuff. It's just a lot of looking around.
That it is. So you fielded the one report. Were you by yourself when you fielded that report, or did you go with another individual more experienced or something? I mean, I'm kind of curious how that dynamic worked.
For the one I fielded, I went out by myself. I went out there, got his report, and then I hiked up the hill behind his house, set up camp for the night just to see if I could see anything, see if anything would happen. Nothing did. But after looking around the area he was in, there was food, there was an orchard nearby, there was cave systems, there was water, everything you'd need for something of that size to live.
So you figured it made logical sense that there could have been something there.
Yes, sir.
How'd that make you feel when you went out and you investigated for the first time and interviewed the witness, and then you did the site survey, and it sounds like you did an overnight, if I'm understanding.
Kind of awkward, actually. It feels weird scrutinizing somebody else's encounter, getting them to tell you what they saw, judging to see if it made sense that they seen something. It feels kind of strange asking them the questions.
Okay, let's get into it. It's kind of important that we figure out where we're coming from. Tell us what happened that led up to your sighting, and then about your sighting itself. What was the whole situation?
All right, well, I was 15 years old. Me and my buddy did what we usually did back then. We just snuck out of the house, went and played in the woods. That's what we did every time when we hung out. So, snuck out of the house about 3 o'clock in the morning. We were walking around the woods right about light. So, had it been right around 5:30, light just started to break. It was still really dark. You couldn't quite make out color yet, but you could make out objects. We walked into this field. There was a deer acting funny. We stared at that for a minute because it was really strange. It was hunkered down to the ground. It wasn't moving, and there was something standing behind it. We noticed it because it stood up. It went from just being shadows back there to something standing up straight. It turns around. It walks back into the woods out of the field. You hear a really loud hiss, like somebody letting off an air brake or a pneumatic hose makes, that so loud. And then it started stomping toward us. Well, at least we think it started stomping toward us. You couldn't see it, but you hear it getting closer, just the loud thumping on the ground. So we left the field. Both of us looked at each other, wanted to know what we just saw, so we walked back in. Each time we walked back in, it'd stomp us back out. Walk back in, stomp us back out. That happened a couple of times until the last time we walked back in, just because we were just trying to figure out what we saw. We thought somebody was messing with us at first. And that last time we walked in, we stood there for a minute. There was no noise at all. And then right at the edge of the wood line, something huge stepped out from behind a tree, looked right down at us. I got a good look at its lower section, as good a look as I could with the lighting. At that point, you could just barely make out shapes. Being so close, you could kind of see some color, and it looked about like the color of the dead pine needles and the red dirt around there. I didn't get a good look at its face. Kind of happy I didn't. Thing had hands the size of my chest. Forearms were as big around as my legs, and back then I weighed about 280 pounds. It made a sound at us, just a low exhale, and we walked backwards away. Neither one of us ran. We were yelling at each other not to run, just like you do with any other predator. Can't run away from it because it'll chase you. And we got out of there. Turned around. Once we felt like we were safe enough away, we turned back around and left. It was the last time the two of us snuck out together.
So much for teenage angst there. I didn't catch earlier. Was this near one of your houses? Your house or his house?
Yep. It was about 2 miles away from my house. We'd sneak out, cut up through the woods, walk about 2 miles up to where town was. A town consists of a convenience store out there. There's a convenience store, shopping center with about 5 stalls in it, and a truck stop. We were out past town a little bit, just messing around. So we saw all that.
And you mentioned it was about a week before you started really looking into it. How'd you start looking into it? I mean, I guess internet or what was it set in your mind? I mean, well, first off, did you doubt what you saw?
When I saw it really far away, we doubted it. Didn't know what he saw. Really thought it was a person out there messing around with us. Thought somebody saw us out there and was trying to scare us, mess with us. When we saw it up close, I'd say at first, all I felt was fear. Then it was a bit of disbelief. It's still kind of disbelief. I still don't really believe I saw it. But go back and forth with, did we really see something? Did we not see something? But that week, even with that doubting it, believing it, doubting it, believing it, I do know the fear stayed. The being afraid of it stayed. In fact, I'm still kind of afraid of it. I don't like going in that area in particular. I don't know why. I've been in the woods around there. I don't like going where it happened.
That's interesting that you associate the fear not with the activity so much as you do the location. You've associated it with an area.
I think most of that is because of how small, scared I felt at the time. At first, when we saw it far away, we're two 15-year-olds together, feel indestructible. Nothing can mess with you when you're that age. But man, when that thing, that its hits were at the middle of my chest, it's almost like a primal fear you get when something that size is looking down at you. That's not separated between the glass at the zoo. I've seen animals bigger than that before. I've seen elephants up close. I've seen giraffes up close. I've heard a lion roar. But all at the zoo, you feel safe and secure. Something different when it's looking at you in the wood line. in the dark, in its element. It's kind of like the difference between, I'd say, looking at a shark in the aquarium versus looking at a shark swimming up towards you at the beach.
That's a very apt analogy. A lot of people can get spooked. I've known well-armed, perfectly sane, older adult men in a group that can manage to get spooked out in the middle of the woods at night. That's not a hard thing. And it may have just been a raccoon or an armadillo making some noise.
Oh, yeah.
You actually saw a creature. But now let me ask you this, because I find this fascinating. You went from having that experience. Well, let's back up a little bit. How long after the experience, or was it during the experience? At what point did you settle that you had to have seen a Sasquatch?
When I saw something big, man-shaped and hairy looking right at me. That was the first thing that popped in my mind. Because that thing, the second time we laid eyes on it, it was 10 to 15 feet away. It was close.
So you didn't have enough room for doubt. It was right there, and you had to settle up with reality right then.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. It took 2 years for me to sleep the lights off after that. I think I associate the fear with it more with the area and being in the dark. Not so much anymore. Right now it's still the area, but it took me a year or two before I'd turn the lights off when I go to sleep. Just terrified that thing was going to show up again, follow me home or something. Don't know why I thought that no other animal really follows you home other than a stray dog.
Fear follows you no matter where you are.
Oh, yeah.
And you have a traumatic experience, you're going to have the fear. The fear you're going to have to live with. How long was it before you started doing inquiry or research? Well, actually, not even before that. How long after the sighting before you started trying to tell people, and who did you tell?
Well, it took about a week. And first person I reached out to, the very first person I reached out to about it was my father. He didn't live with us at the time. He lived up in the mountains of Virginia. I reached out to him because I knew he'd had a sighting before when he was young. I grew up with that story. We all thought Dad was just messing with us because that was his favorite pastime, was when we'd go up to the mountains to my uncle's house, he would drive us around the mountains at night and try and scare us. And then he'd take us to this place called Hubble Hill in Tazewell, Virginia, and tell us about the time how him and his cousin were out there and they saw a Bigfoot. And then he'd turn the lights off in the car and sit there. We just thought Dad was messing with us. And once I had that sighting, that's when I really knew Dad wasn't playing around.
That's interesting that you had never really believed him. But then all of a sudden, as soon as you had your experience, you saw your father in a whole new light.
Yep.
Was he sympathetic to you, or was he equally doubting of you? How did that go about?
Oh, my dad, the way he is, he kind of got excited. He was kind of excited. He was to know that I'd seen one recently. Man, he came to visit us one time while we were still living out that way. The first thing he did when he got there is, now right behind where that sighting was, there's an old abandoned railroad, and that's part of what we'd walk to get out that way, was that old abandoned railroad. He got his van out, and we drove out that railroad in the middle of the night. This was 2 years after the sighting. So I was about 17 then, when he finally came out that way. Yep, he got excited when he heard about that. He thought it'd be neat to see one again. Granted, his sighting was back in the early to mid 1980s. So he had a lot of time between his sighting and that. And I think part of the reason why he wanted to see another one is because the one he saw going up to that road where he's seen it, him pointing out where it was is 200 yards away. So I think he wanted to see another one just to prove it to himself.
His was far enough that he may have had some doubt or something like, just something nagging at him. He's like, am I sure what I actually saw? And you think he just wanted to get something a little bit closer, a little bit more like what you had, just to prove it.
Yeah, I think so. Which I can sympathize with that. I'm kind of the same way, even with the up-close sighting. I haven't seen another one in, it's been 7 years. There's that doubt there that maybe I have just seen things, even though I have talked to so many other people that have seen them. I've gone to places, I've seen footprints. There's still that doubt in your mind that maybe I didn't. Don't know. Maybe one day that doubt will go away. I don't know.
Let me ask you the elephant in the room there. You've talked to a bunch of people that have seen them and have related events and everything to you. Have you talked to very many people that you just don't believe?
Definitely. Not a lot, but I have talked to some people that I don't know how they could have seen what they saw, or
right.
It's not so much what they're saying, it's how they're saying it. You know what I mean? Where you can kind of tell when somebody's lying to you.
I know exactly what you mean.
It almost seems like those people are the people just trying to get one over on you. It doesn't really... I've never talked to anybody who's like tried to hoax for any reason other than it just seems like they think it's fun messing with the crazy guy who believes in Bigfoot.
You'd be surprised how common that is. I mean, maybe you've already run into it, but that's actually a very common thing. It happens to a lot of people that get into this field.
And then I've talked to plenty of people that I really do believe what they said. Like I had a friend when I first started getting into this a little more serious, which was after high school, which only been the last couple of years. After he found out what I had seen and stuff, he came forward. He told me that back in I can't remember what year it was. Him and his dad were hiking out up in the Pacific Northwest. They were in Oregon visiting his aunt. They were hiking and something was standing at the top of the waterfall. It looked up at him, flailed its arms, screamed, ran off. You get stories like that it was somebody who you've known them for a long time and they've just never told you anything. And then all of a sudden one day they come out and tell you. It's funny the combination of the stuff you get. You'll get the people that see them, tell you right away, and then you'll get people that'll keep it bottled up for years.
You mentioned it took you about a week for the initial fear and then for you to kind of, I guess, make peace and realize what you had experienced and to start developing your interest. What did you start doing? How did we go from 7 days after your event to sitting out in the woods behind people's houses because they said they saw something?
It all started with the only thing I knew of at the time, because Finding Bigfoot was out. That was let me know that the BFRO existed, and that was all I knew about the Bigfoot world at the time. So I get on the BFRO's website, and I read just about every sighting in Virginia, just to see how similar, dissimilar things are to what I saw. Started off with that, then moved on to trying to find other things, what I could find on the internet, which in 2012 there wasn't quite as much as there is right now. It wasn't until a couple years after that they're starting to get a lot more stuff online. I read about every encounter I could find and started figuring out what the different things to look for were, which the only definitive thing to look for is the creature itself or its footprints. So when I'd go out at night, I would kind of be cautious, look around, see what I could find. Because I spend a lot of my time fishing at nighttime. So when I was out in some the more secluded parts of the lake fishing, I'd look around, see if I could see any footprints. I never found anything. The only thing I ever found that was odd was a small little teepee wrapped in briar. It was strange, but never. The only reason why I thought there could be anything to it other than a person making it was the fact that it wasn't far from where my sighting was. But I don't know how I feel about some of the stick structures. Some of them could be, some of them not. I don't know. It all started with that, going into the BFRO's website, reading what they had to share, and then eventually I found a group in Virginia, talked to some of the guys there, and I met two of them before I ended up a member. I met two of them. They seemed like some pretty cool guys, so I ended up joining their group and spent a lot of time talking with them. And that's how I ended up where I'm at now, where we get reports and I'll run and go see what happened out that way.
Now, Brandon, are those field reports that you take care of, do you have a standard procedure in what equipment you use to report on them, to go, and do you take notes? How do you go about the field reports?
Yes. Now, for an actual sighting report, we do have a standard procedure. We have printouts. It just goes down the list of stuff to make it to where we don't forget to ask a question or forget different things throughout the way. Try the best not to lead a witness. Try not to ask them anything specific, leading them into telling us what we want to hear. We ask them what they saw and to describe it. And then whatever they didn't say, like color or something like that, we try to ask them that, like, what color was it? How tall do you think it was? Try to keep it as non-leading as possible. And for the most part, just try to get them to give us as much information as they can without asking those specific questions. And I do keep a journal. I have a lot of notes in it from just me personally running around looking, and all from the bottom side of the state. But I found keeping a journal is the best way to keep my own memory clean. It prevents you from, memories tend to deteriorate a little bit. But if you can go back and actually read what you wrote at the time of what happened. So what did the person actually say to me? What did I actually see there? It also helps preventing different events from blending together, which I've noticed happens a little bit when I'm not looking at something. I get a little confused sometimes with stuff like that. Now, for equipment, I keep tape measures in the car, a small one for normal size things. I also keep a 300-foot tape measure. Getting an accurate distance on how far away something was is nice. It really helps set up the scale of what happened. If I could write that down in my notebook, because estimating gets you close, but at least for me, it's kind of hard. But so I keep that. I keep a tape measure, a small one and a 300-foot one. I carry around envelopes, plastic bags, carry on the envelopes if I do collect any hair samples, which I've never ran into any. Hope I do one day. Be kind of neat. Keep the plastic bags, and if I find anything else that could potentially be left there by a Bigfoot, any flesh, any droppings. So far, I've pretty much only used my phone camera for any pictures I've taken, simply because cameras are expensive. I plan on getting one soon, but it's only been in the last 3 years that I've gotten really serious into this and really started researching areas, investigating what's going on, and trying to find anything out of the ordinary.
Now wait a minute. You're telling me you're going out at night. I'm assuming you're going out somewhere, you're parking your car. Are you walking away from your car usually, or are you staying near your vehicle?
Oh, I'll walk away from my car, usually go a couple 100 yards out into the woods. Now, I carry a flashlight with me and stuff like that, but that's about it.
I just wanted to clarify for my own interest. You're in the Virginias, so they look a little bit different than what I'm used to. Could you describe the terrain a little bit for us?
So around here, where I've done most of my research, it's really flat and really swampy. You'll be walking on nice solid ground, and then all of a sudden you're in several inches of boggy nastiness. There's a lot of rivers and waterways, all interconnected, little streams, feeder ditches, ponds, creeks, and rivers. So that's pretty much what the terrain looks like around here, where I'm at. Now, go west of here, where I've done the other half of my research, is a little bit hillier. So you got nice rolling hills. They're not too tall, but in the bottoms, you got creeks that all run down to the Lake Gaston. So there's plenty of lakes and rivers out there too, but the land out there is a little bit firmer.
What kind of trees, what kind of flora are in the area?
Out here in this part, we got a lot of pine and live oak here in the swamps. We cypress, pine, and live oak are the three big ones that I can recognize.
What about ground cover?
Ground cover?
Do you have a lot of brambles and bushes that you can't really see very far into the woods with?
That depends on where you're at. The swampier it is around here, it seems to be mostly the ground is a little bit brushy. But once you get into the boggy areas, you get a lot of reeds. So you get past the trees, get into the reeds. I haven't ran into a whole lot of briar around here, though, surprisingly. I would say just in the places I've walked out into, I haven't ran into a lot of briar. I have ran into plenty of little shrubby brush, but some places get kind of thick, but a lot of places are pretty open with pine and just a few saplings in between you.
What's your background as far as being out in the woods? You've mentioned, as teenagers, you obviously were somewhat comfortable in the woods, but I'm assuming you grew up rural the whole time. Did you hunt or fish at all? Did y'all go camping a lot? Or were you a little more of an indoor kid? I mean, what was going on?
Growing up, it was for several years. It was out here in Chesapeake. Then we ended up moving out to Mecklenburg County. So the whole time, my whole life, I've always fished. I've never really hunted successfully. But where my dad, he grew up in the mountains. So he always had us outside. I spent all kinds of time out there just messing around, fishing. He showed us a little bit how to track, because he did grow up hunting. He'd show us how to follow game trails and stuff like that, which is pretty neat growing up. Thought that was really cool. So I've always had an interest in the outdoors and have pretty much always been in them as much as I could.
Now, I don't know if you had addressed this earlier. Did you ever go looking for Bigfoot with your father after you had your sighting? Is that something you two have done occasionally or anything like that?
Only the one time.
Only the one time?
Yep, only the one time. I mean, he lives so far away, I don't really see him that often. And when we do see each other, it's usually at a family reunion type get together. So no, the two of us haven't really done a lot of that.
Now, you mentioned it's really been in the last 3 years that you've become active with groups and other people. How did you make the jump from Bigfoot and I'm assuming a Bigfoot research group? How did you make the jump over to Dogman?
Well, that's been very recent, within the last couple of months. You see so much stuff about it. In fact, I don't know how I feel about Dogman. But I think I made the jump because I've seen something that most people think is unbelievable. Who am I to discredit everybody who says they've seen these things? And since I kind of have it in me I want to know more about everything. So I've heard all these stories of it. I've seen the pictures of people talking about how they've seen footprints from these things. I've seen the few pictures and videos that are out there of it, which are kind of believable. And I really started getting into Dogman because I want to know more about it. I want to know as much as I can about everything that's going on.
So breaking into that subject, you on the website in the community here a few days ago, you posted up an article about an incident that evidently occurred. I'm thinking it was about a month ago, but I may be wrong. But
Yeah.
You mentioned that you and a couple other people had been out and investigated it recently. Could you go into that? Tell us, what was it that caught y'all's interest and made it worth the drive?
Well, what made it seem interesting was an elderly woman. She was attacked and killed by animals, and they got DNA from it. The DNA did not match the dogs that walked with her that they thought it was at first. It didn't match any of the local animals they tested it against. And whatever it was, it killed her without making any noise because her neighbors didn't go out to look until they heard the dogs going off. So whatever did it, it was a lot of violence very quickly, which to me sounds like a big cat. Well, they say they don't have big cat around there, which it sounds like a big cat, but in the report, they talk about the killing seeming canine to the investigators that looked into it. The local wildlife people, or whoever it was that investigated, said, look, they're not sure what kind of canine did it. Well, they just recently re-released a red wolf into North Carolina, and they said the DNA didn't match any of the local animals. I'm assuming red wolf would have been first on their list since it was such a new animal to the area to match it against. So the possibility was there that it could have been Dogman activity. And with something like that happening and it all being dead ends for them, it seems like there could have been something that happened there that was just out of the ordinary. Well, of course it's out of the ordinary. People don't get killed by animals in eastern North Carolina that often, except for out in the water. So it was worth it just to go down there and see what it could have been.
And what were your findings? What were y'all's conclusions?
Well, it was the night we went down there. It was nothing but normal night sounds in the woods. We staked out a few places. The bugs are going, saw a couple raccoons, a possum ran across the street. And don't know what it could have been. We didn't find anything that leads us to believe it was this thing or that. So it's still an open mystery.
Okay, and to be clear, I want to share with everybody, we're talking about there was an elderly woman that deceased in Beaufort County, and this happened approximately about February 15th. They did test the body. The body had injuries that were indicative of a large canine.
Yes.
They were not able to determine a type or anything like that more than just this looks like a canine damage. The woman was known to walk with neighborhood dogs. These were not her dogs,
Yes.
but this was a regular occurrence. I mean, she was out walking at like 5 a.m., wasn't she?
Yeah, it was very, very early in the morning.
Okay. So she was walking out. She had the neighborhood dogs that were going along in tow. They had been with her for years doing this. This was a routine.
Yes.
At some point during the walk that morning, some other canine came into the scene, attacked her, mutilated her, and left her for dead in the ditch. Now, the first culprits obviously were the dogs that are following her. When they got into the scene, there were still some of the dogs there. The dogs did have blood on the paw.
Yes.
And a little bit in their mouth. This is what led them to take swabs and do DNA tests on these dogs. And they compared it to DNA in the wounds of the woman.
Yes.
The DNA did not match. They spread to the surrounding area. I believe I read, 15 dogs ended up being sampled and checked, and it wasn't any of them. Now, the article mentions, and I think it's important to say, this was a mitochondrial DNA test.
Yes, which is not...
It's the most basic definitive level. Right. It's not definitive. What it does do is say this animal either did or did not do it, but it doesn't say this animal, or rather what kind of animal it is that did do it. They didn't run mitochondrial, or rather a deeper DNA on the woman. They just got far enough to figure out canine.
They got far enough to figure out it was canine, and it was not one of the dogs around there.
Right.
Because
so we know it wasn't any of the local dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, with the mitochondrial, it could have been any of the pups in that litter would have had the same mitochondrial DNA, because mitochondrial DNA is the one that goes down the maternal line.
Correct. So they know these dogs were not related to what attacked her. Had there been any reports of aggressive dog activity or anything like that in that region?
Not that I've heard of.
How about animal kills, livestock kills, any predation, anything like that?
That's the only strange account from that area that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And I'm sure that if there were other things strange happening around there, I would be on the list of people that knew about it, since my sister and her husband, his whole family lives around there.
Okay. So you have a personal tie to the area, too.
Yes, I have a personal tie to that area. I talk with them a couple times a week. I'm sure if something else strange was happening around there, that would have heard it through the grapevine.
That's often the only time you're ever going to hear about stuff like that. You don't often hear in the newspaper or even in police reports when you have livestock killed or pets missing, things like that. A lot of that stuff doesn't actually ever make the press. It doesn't make it public. And so people would really be surprised, those who haven't looked into this before, actually how difficult it is to track down animal mutilation and animal deaths. Farmers, they'll make insurance claims.
Yep.
But it's similar to like a car wreck. You know, you may make a report, you may make you photograph it and everything else. You know, you get some sort of certification. Yeah, I've got an animal death, but that's it. But it doesn't go in the paper as saying, you know, Farmer Joe's got a dead cow and its head was ripped off. It has to be something fairly unique and interesting, and I suspect a slow news day for it to actually make it out in the press. It happens more than you think. I mean, it's just animal predation. Everyone figures, well, coyotes got it, or a cougar got it, or something like that. Now, you mentioned there were no big cats known in the area. Am I correct?
No known big cats in the area. You do
what
get
about
reporting
unknown cats.
Now we get into unknown big cats in North Carolina. There's a creature referred to as the Beast of Bladenboro, and also called the Vampire Beast, which those reports are further south and west of there, for the most part, what the creature that they describe is a big cat that has been known to...
Is it a black cat?
It's been described a few different ways. I've seen people that up near, I think it was up near Durham, with some of the more recent vampire beast sightings. There was some guys, they lost a pit bull. A creature had killed a pit bull with virtually no noise, not waking anybody up. They just found it dead the next day, which is impressive that something could kill a pit bull with no fight. Well, one of the local guys got a picture of the creature, and it was a mountain lion. I have a feeling that mountain lion accounts for a lot of the Beast of Bladenboro sightings. Now, black, I have heard people say that it was black, but you get a lot of black cat sightings pretty much in most of the rural areas. Most of the people I've talked to know somebody who's seen a black cat.
The mountain lion's getting pretty common, it seems like, out in America. It's repopulating.
Which makes sense. There's not as many hunters in the woods. No,
there's not. And the human presence out there has actually dwindled. It's dropped. And so we've had actually a reclamation of wild space. When everybody left the farms, they've all gone to the cities. Everybody's in the suburbs. And farming doesn't take up as much land as it used to because we're able to use the land more effectively. I mean, even timber is now going to tree farm. And so there's a lot more open area that's not access, or humans
Definitely.
rather. And people don't realize that. People think there's a person every 500 feet everywhere in the United States.
Yeah, if you spread us out evenly.
Not true.
If you spread us out evenly,
true,
maybe, but
know?
we're all pushed into these small little pockets. And then, say, last hunting season was the first time I ever got a hunting license and actually went out to go hunt. Wasn't successful. Only saw a cow. But, say, like in the state of Virginia, just your basic hunting license, it gives you 6 tags. That tells you how few people are out there hunting. If they want give every person the chance to kill 6 deer without buying any more tags. The population here is so immense that I know here in Virginia they've talked about bringing back some of the natural predators. The DNR's actually talked about doing it just to try to keep the deer population under control because nobody's out there hunting them anymore.
Has your deer population got to the point where it's considered a nuisance or a pest?
In certain areas, I've heard people say that, but I haven't done a whole lot of research onto it. But I do know that I'm not sure. I think that's everywhere though. That they do let farmers kill them if they get into their fields.
That's not everywhere.
Okay.
Down here in Texas, I do believe you get in a lot of trouble.
Okay, well, I know around here that they consider. They do, yeah. Okay, so I guess they do. I guess they do. It has gotten to the point where they consider them a pest, where they let the farmers kill them if they get into their fields.
Yeah, every state's different. In general, I've heard of several places where they've gotten to the point that they'll let you. And it depends on your state laws too. Some states have it where, hey, if it's your private land and it's standing on your front lawn, you can take it. Other states, they find out you took it and it was standing in your living room, you're still going to go to jail.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it just depends. Tell me, do you have a hog population out there? And is it a nuisance in its own right?
There is no official hog population here. There have been reports of feral hogs, but all of them believed to have been released by farmers to give them something to hunt. I do know that one of the areas I've researched up in kind of central Virginia, I do know that every now and again you got to watch out for a feral hog. One of my buddies, his dad was out there. They were, him and his mom were walking around, and there was a feral hog about gored him. He took it with his pistol. So I've had reports I've had people tell me there is some feral hogs in certain places, but we don't have enough of a population of them to really talk about.
The difference of the worlds. Here in Texas, we hunt them with machine guns and helicopters.
Oh, I know. I've actually been planning a trip out to Texas to go hog hunting.
Oh, have you? Okay.
Yep. My sister lives in Louisiana, so just on the border of Texas. One of my other sisters.
We've got feral hogs, kind of like we've got roaches. They're just everywhere. They're probably the number one danger that you have to figure about going into the woods.
Oh yeah, hogs.
We carry weapons. Yeah, we carry weapons because of hogs, not because of Bigfoot or mountain lions or cougars or anything like that.
Texas just passed another law in regards to that.
They can leave poison out now just to kill the hogs. I mean, totally indiscriminately.
See, here in Chesapeake, where I'm at right now, we carry weapons in the woods because of the bear. There's so many bear here. We have them wander into town. They'll be in the middle of town.
Now you see, that's interesting because it's been theorized that a Sasquatch and a bear probably fulfill the same kind of a niche in the food chain. They're both going to be top predators. And so if you can support a decent bear population, that implies you probably could support at least a smaller Sasquatch population. Now, down here in the South, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, that area, we actually don't have a whole lot of bears. I mean, you get some coming into East Texas and Oklahoma, but there's not been a whole lot. I think the whole last 3 or 4 years, I think I've only seen 1 or 2 bear tracks, and that was in Oklahoma.
In the last 3 years, I've shooed 3 bears off of trails I've walked on.
Really?
Yep. There's so many black bear around here. And the good thing about a black bear, though, is all you got to do is yell at it, and they usually just run off. They're very unaggressive animals.
That's the general experience we have over here. If you usually make yourself bigger and badder than it's going to run the other way. But however, that does speak good for your environment and your ecosystem. It will support a large predator. I know down here, we don't actually, like I was saying, we don't have a whole lot of bears yet. They are working their way west. They're coming back in because Arkansas's got them, Louisiana's got them, Mississippi's got them, and all that. They are coming back into Texas and Oklahoma. And you can't blame them because we're overflowing with food.
Oh, yeah.
We've got exploding deer population. We got exploding hog population. And everything under it, down to rabbits. Something a lot of people don't think about and they don't talk about is we're overrun with feral cats. You've got
feral cats?
House cats that have just gotten out, had about 50 litters, and they had another 50 litters. It wasn't that long ago, let's say back in May, I was out in the field with Michael Waldy, one of our researchers. We had picked a campsite out in the middle of a WMA, and this campsite was overrun. We had like 7, 8, 9 feral cats that were out there. We had 1 or 2 adults and then like 7 or 8 middle-aged kittens. They were old enough to be kind of semi-independent. And we all night we had to just sit here and deal with the cats coming through camp and going around and doing whatever. You see them all the time as roadkill. They are decimating our bird. Oh yeah, they're decimating our bird population. Towns usually are worse, but they are getting out into the woods.
Yeah.
And again, it's just, there's so much food supply out there that even they are overpopulating and starting to be kind of a nuisance problem.
Well, kind of makes sense. Statistically wise, the domestic cat's the most efficient predator on the planet. I think, what is it? One out of 3 animals they try to take, they kill.
Is it that high?
I think it was that high, which is impressive.
Okay.
Shoot, there's one cat was on an island. I can't remember where it was responsible for the extinction of a bird species that lived on that island. Just one cat.
Just
throughout its life. Just there was no other predators on the island, and that one cat took them all those birds out. Can't remember the name of the birds either that it was. That's crazy that you got a feral cat problem. I know here in Norfolk, Virginia, they were starting to get a problem with feral cats, but the city ran around and took care of it real quick. They rounded all those cats up and put them down.
So you had the personal tie with the Beaufort County incident, and then the other event that you had investigated, that you had actually gotten as a report through the Bigfoot group you were associated with.
Yes.
And I say were, you actually still are. We're not going to name them just out of respect for anything. I'm still fascinated that after your encounter, even if it was 7 years, it was 5 to 7 years ago, 7 years ago?
7 years ago.
Okay. I am seriously impressed that even after 7 years, you've got the cojones to sit out in the woods by yourself at night. That's impressive, my friend. There's not a lot of people that would do it. To be perfectly honest, I won't do that. I'm very, very rarely will ever be out in the woods by myself. I'll do it during the day, but almost rarely ever, never at night. I always have a buddy up. I'm a big believer in the buddy system. Man, that takes balls. I'm sorry, it does.
I got several people that know where I'm at and can come to me if I need them to. It's a combination of that and a lot of praying, and a lot of freaking out. You'll freak out for a little bit. You'll pray, sit there, and a lot of foxhole praying. It could just be a squirrel, might just be a raccoon. You might have heard a deer walking. You'll freak out for a little bit, get your wits about you again, stop, think, look around, realize that no, the woods are not any different at nighttime. It's just scarier because you can't see what's going on around you.
But
no,
aren't you afraid? Aren't you concerned that something's gonna just sneak up behind you and grab you by the scruff of your neck and remove your left arm?
It's like I heard Jody Cook one time say, I hope that if something does get me out there while it's happening, that I'll have my camera rolling at the time and I'll get it on video.
You'll take
one
real
for
evidence.
The team. So
yeah,
my missing 411 account has actually got a video to go along with it.
That would be nice.
What really happened.
That would be nice. We could use one of those videos. I don't think anyone wants to volunteer to make it, but we all agree we could use one of those videos. Now, let's talk about that for a second. You listed your equipment you carried out before. You didn't mention any kind of night vision or thermal equipment. Do you not have any?
Nope. I never saved up enough money to get any.
Okay.
So a lot of...
What about...
Yes?
No, go ahead.
I'll say it's mostly getting adjusted to the nighttime and use my flashlight when I need to.
Okay. Do you have any kind of special usage or requirements as far as your flashlight goes? What's your light discipline like? I guess what I'm asking is, are you going entirely white? Do you run red or green? Anything like that?
I just use the light I keep in my pocket. It's just a white light. It puts out 15 lumens on the low setting and 600 on the high setting.
Okay.
I use that when I need it. But for the most part, I'm kind of used to being in the woods at night. I grew up running around in the woods at night. Running around is used more as a term than anything. You don't run around when you're in the woods at night.
I understand what you're
saying. You'll walk through real slow and try not to fall any holes, try not to trip over anything. Because the last thing you want to do is hurt yourself while you're out there by yourself. And nobody's coming to find you until they realize you didn't show up till morning.
Right. You didn't think you were going to avoid the quiz, did you?
No, I figured it was coming.
Oh, okay. But that tells me you're a loyal listener. That makes me feel so much better, actually. Okay. Alrighty, bud. Miss Jen's not here. She had to step away for a few minutes, people. So I am going to do the quick cryptid connection quiz. I just want to let everybody know that this has become sort of a tradition. Jen started getting worried that some people didn't like it, or that it was kind of a put off or something like that. And I have pushed to keep it in the show. I mean, it's a chance for all of us to fall on our face. We can have some fun with it. So in that vein, Brandon, boy, you got it coming. I'm not going to ask you a long list, though. But now, remember, one of these is a Bigfoot-type creature. See if you can identify it. And the other one is a animal that used to be a cryptid, but has been proven by science since then. Okay?
Okay.
And so I want to know if you're able to catch it, which one it is. All right, Brandon, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Now remember, if you know about it or you believe in it, it's a yay. If you don't believe in it or you've never heard of it, if you don't believe in it, it's a nay. If you've never heard of it and you think it's complete just quack, you say what? And there are extra points for the more creative say what that you get. I'm always adamant on that. You know, I'm all up for creativity here, buddy. Okay, here we go with the first one. The Selma.
Say what?
The Jersey Devil.
Yay.
The Milta.
Say what?
The King's Tie.
Say what?
Rougarou.
Yay.
Capolobo.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that.
Yeren.
Yay. It's a Chinese Bigfoot.
Oh, you got that one right. The Tommy Knocker.
Yay. I've heard of that.
And we're not talking about the Stephen King version either.
No, we're not. We're talking about the little people from Germany that they said would knock on the inside of the mines.
The frilled shark.
Frilled shark, yay. I know about a frilled shark. They used to think they were mythological.
Minihuni.
I think I've heard of that, but I'm going to go ahead and say what?
Okay. You already identified the Yeren. You were correct about that. And I think you identified the frilled shark.
Yes.
As the former cryptid. So you did. So you actually got 100 points. I'm going to subtract 5, however, because you weren't quite amusing enough with your say whats.
All right.
I want to hear some say whats. What are your plans? What are your plans? Where do you want to see going forward? Where do you want to take this thing?
Well, right now, what I'm working toward is, so where I'm at in Chesapeake, I'm on the edge of the Great Dismal Swamp. In fact, this whole area at one point was called the Great Dismal Swamp by the first Europeans to come here. I can't remember the name of the guy, but he said that this area is one great dismal swamp. They've drained most of that swamp away. Well, The Dismal Swamp Wildlife Refuge is really close to where I'm at standing right now. That wildlife refuge extends in a good portion of Virginia and the cities of Chesapeake and Suffolk, all the way down into North Carolina. There's several major rivers that all have green belts. They go all the way from where that river terminates all the way up to that swamp. There's green belts that connect all of that. There's also the Roanoke River that extends from the mountains of Virginia, and that river connects into those green belts that lead into the Dismal Swamp Wildlife Refuge. So you're looking at all the way from the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, to here. There is passage for some kind of creature, maybe several kinds of creatures, to move relatively hidden. Currently, my short-term goal is to track the sightings and movement of the creatures moving in and out of the Dismal Swamp through the green belts that lead around here. Say like the Northwest River is the biggest one I've been looking at, because the Northwest River does connect the sightings that I have heard of around here in Chesapeake and Virginia Beach.
Okay.
The Northwest River connects those sightings, which is crazy. I didn't realize it until I started plotting stuff on maps. I started plotting stuff on a map, and I noticed the Northwest River has this huge forest all the way around it, that a lot of it is DNR land. It's sectioned off to where people can't build in there. People aren't supposed to be there at nighttime. All kinds of stuff. And it connects, one of the places it connects to has had a history of sightings going back years. Can't remember when it all started. I think it all started back in the 70s is when the first reported sightings from that area. And it's funny, that Northwest River and these other surrounding green belts, there's all kinds of local legends of don't go out there at night, something will get you. There's hauntings and all kinds of weird stuff. And I've noticed a lot of the haunting reports you get, like the local legends of hauntings. You hear about babies crying in the woods, screams in the woods. You'll see shadows moving when you're out there in those woods on that road, which surprisingly sounds a lot like people's Bigfoot encounters.
Yes, it
So
does.
I think there's something to that. I think there's something to all these local haunted places where you hear weird sounds in the woods and shadows darting. And it connects a huge, the Dismal Swamp Wildlife Refuge. Oh man, I wish I had it on hand how big that is, but it's enormous. It's larger than the city of Chesapeake that I'm in right now, or at least as big as it. And it connects into so much farmland. Like most of the land around it's farm, and other forests that lead up to it. There's so much room for these things to move around in here and be almost completely undetected by people. Very rarely do people go off trail in the Dismal Swamp, because once you get off trail, you're knee deep in boggy, nasty water in a lot of places. So what I want to do is I want to figure out what time of year they're moving, where they're moving, and stuff like that. And a lot of what I've done is documented for myself personally, just running around looking to see where the deer are at during certain times of the year, because I believe that something of that size would have to follow the deer herds. And a lot of those deer are here year round, surprisingly enough. You get them all year long. So as of right now, I think there is a static population in the area, one that doesn't move around, doesn't have to follow herds, because there is an abundant food source right here that stays here. The bear don't really move out of here. They stay in that swamp. So why wouldn't these things? And it's strange. You go out there in that swamp, you start making funny noises, you'll have a game warden on you in no time, yelling at you for disturbing the birds, because we have bird populations that they want to keep safe. It's funny that there's such a presence in there, and they're on top of you really quick anytime you're doing anything suspicious. When I say suspicious, I mean they hear you making funny noises, they see you out there looking too hard at things, and you're really studying the woods. Granted, it could just be they're looking for poachers. When they see the people studying the land too much, they could be afraid somebody's going out there to go poaching, but it's just odd that you hear about that around the country, though, too, of people going out places where they're pretty sure there's Bigfoot in the area. They go out there looking like they're looking for Bigfoot, and game wardens come and tell them to stop doing what they're doing. Though here, it's usually for the birds. I don't know why, but they tell you not to disturb the birds.
That does seem like an odd excuse.
Yeah, what bird are you scaring off? And scaring them off, what are you doing to them other than scaring them off? Wouldn't they just lie back in? Or at least that's my understanding of birds.
You're evidently, if you make too much noise in the woods, the birds don't have sex. They can't reproduce. You know? I mean,
yeah,
it makes no sense.
Yeah, if you make too much noise in the woods for 15 minutes and then leave, the birds will all die. I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, I'm right there with you. You know, I call it, you know, guilt while squatching, or you know, or whatever. You're out there, and next thing you know, they've got their lights on you and they pull you over. It's happened several times. I really wish there was a way you could look for Bigfoot and do your research and not look like a poacher, because I'll give them a lot of credit, and I think a lot of the effort, at least down here, really is either poaching or drug enforcement.
Yep.
And I wish we could do it without looking like the jerks that are actually guilty of something.
Yeah,
but
when you're running around the woods with a
really
flashlight, and you do kind of look like
out here. Yeah, out here, it gets to be a situation because whether you got a carry permit or not, half the time there are some parts of the woods that you can carry in. There are some parts of the woods that you cannot. Most of the more interesting areas tend to be the areas you can't carry in.
Yep.
And so, you know, you don't even want one in the vehicle. If you got a vehicle, or if you got a weapon in the vehicle, that guy's going to give you a little bit of hassle if he finds it. What are you doing in the WMA? Why do you have this? You know, and God forbid if it's a rifle. If it's a rifle, or a shotgun, you're just gone. You know, but if it's a pistol, they may or may not. Depends on how you store it and was it on you or not. You know, that kind of a thing.
That's why, for the most part, I try to just only carry my pistol, and it's more so just to scare bears off.
Yeah,
scare bears off, and well, the only two things I'm really afraid of in the woods around here are bears and people. If you run into a person out there in the middle of the woods at night,
that's never cool.
No, they're usually out there for a reason. So that, you know, it's funny we say that, and that could be part of the reason as to why they do look at us so hard when we are out there at night, because most people that are out there at nighttime are out there for not so good things.
Mm-hmm. I've always thought that we should be their best friends. If we could get a working relationship with wildlife, I mean, because it's nothing to go out in the woods and find a poaching stand or something like that. You know, we could be, as a community, such a wonderful resource for for law enforcement out there, because we're poking around. We see strange stuff. And if we would get a little love, even if it's just to the point that, you know what, they actually know us, we've met, they know what we're doing when we're out there. We're not doing anything suspicious. We've answered the question, whatever. But if it could be a quid pro quo, hey, we'll do that. We'll throw this out to you. Hey, there's a stand, down here at these coordinates. You guys might want to go get it. Or, hell, now it hadn't happened to me in years, but hey, there's a pot grow going over here, or something like that. But instead you get these Gestapo tactics of, who are you? Why are you here? Get out of the woods.
Yep.
And
no matter what you say, you're wrong too.
Yeah. I mean, the irony of it was, and I've said it on the show before, so I don't want to go back into it too deep. I'm sure you've heard it. But the last time I got pulled over, it was 30 minutes searched on the side, 6 or 8 cops, and every second or third question was Bigfoot. Are you looking for Bigfoot? And which disturbed me more than anything. They weren't worried if I was out poaching or hunting or doing anything. They wanted to know if I was out looking for Bigfoot, which sent alarm bells in my head, but it just doesn't seem right. So, anyway.
Out here, I've had people, I think most of it's because a lot of the areas I've been in do have signs up that say you're not supposed to be out there at nighttime. That's why I've stopped going into a lot of those areas. What are you doing off trail? What are you doing out here at night?
Yeah.
Never gotten in any trouble, but I have stopped going into those areas. Very recently, I've gotten a permission to be on some people's land. Live right off of one of those green belts that I like to poke around at.
Right.
So now I got private land to be on, which is nice. That's happened to me very recently.
I was about to say, enjoy that. That's a very rare thing for most people to get.
Yep. And you know what? It was neat. It was completely by coincidence. I was driving out there at night, going to one of my areas, and I see in the front yard of these people's house, there's some horses running around loose. So I stop, knock on their door, trying to get their attention, end up helping them get their horses wrangled and their fence rebuilt. So now I have land I can go on whenever I want to.
Pays to be a good Samaritan.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. That just going out there, didn't think anything, I'm just poking around looking for odd stuff in the woods, end up spending the whole night rebuilding a fence with somebody and ended up with a much better research area than I had before.
That's not odd. That's just being neighborly and, loving your neighbor. It's odd that it ended up happening somewhere where it was mutually beneficial to everybody involved. Yeah.
I helped them and they gave me something. And because I wouldn't take anything else. So they said, you can mess around in the woods whenever you want to. They said, you like hunting, you like camping, whatever you want to do. So I got acres and acres of land to mess around on.
Oh, that's good. You can make a long-term study report out of that.
Yep. Got to get back in there and see if there is anything going on back there. If they do move in and out of the swamp, that is one of the places they'd have to move through. Now, if there's static populations in the swamp and static populations outside of the swamp, maybe not. But that's why I'm looking and why I'm trying to document, is to see if they are moving in and out of the swamp and if they're using the green belts that I assume they'd have to for something that wants to stay hidden.
All right. Let me ask you this, because we got to wrap up.
Okay.
Brandon Lowe, what monster's in your closet or under your bed?
Ooh.
Come on now. This reveals so much about people.
I'd say the monster in my closet is probably a Bigfoot. Anytime the lights go off, that's the first thing that pops in my head. It's almost like you can feel one looking at you.
All right. Let me ask you, before your sighting, before you saw a Bigfoot, before your whole world got changed, what was your monster then?
Monster under my bed back then. Man, back then, it actually was Spiegel from Lord of the Rings. That was the thing that creeped me out the most.
I can understand. All right. But Bigfoot totally knocked him off, and now it's a Bigfoot.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, Brandon, I'm going to have to let you go.
All right.
Jennifer and I got to go ahead and get running here. But we do appreciate you coming on. And,
anytime.
I want to welcome you to the community. I don't know if I had officially done that before. Your presence is welcome. You're contributing, and I really like that. I like what you've added. I'd like to invite everybody out. Join Brandon. You can join almost all of our guests on the community. You can reach out and talk to them. That's cryptidconnection.com. All right, Brandon, you have a good night.
Thank you so much for having this interview with us.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Guests of Cryptid Connection are all members of the Cryptid Connection website. Join the community, a safe, secure, and private place for all your paranormal and cryptid pursuits.
Every cowboy, he always misses when he's aiming at the target in his head. And every broken man finds his idle hands grasping at tomorrow's promised land. And I've been thinking about running, and I'll get out on the town just for myself. And that's when I saw her, and she looked right through me. And when I said I do that day, I really do. And I've been thinking about the time that I have wasted sitting here. 'Cause I've been thinking that all this thinking is the thing that keeps me further from myself.
The music and soundtrack for the opening is from Epic Film Score by Alex Kaskin. The closing credits are Every Cowboy by Cellophane Sam.